So, welcome back, folks. This is episode 7, I believe. I've got Arla here beside me, as always, on Fiancé Farm. We're a little bit later in the day, just because, well, we just did a little bit of maintenance, really. Watering crops, stuff that you guys have seen before, you don't really need to see again. And I suppose at the end of the last episode, I mentioned that I had a point I wanted to make about Arla's topic, so Orla was talking about psychotherapy and the way that's depicted in The Sopranos, and how it's really interesting to Orla how, it's a TV show, right? So like things that happen in real life don't happen in the show and vice versa. So Orla was saying, it's really cool for her to be able to explain to me, someone who isn't, doing a course in psychotherapy, the do's and don'ts that the therapist in The Sopranos is doing. And it just triggered a memory that I had, and I thought it'd be cool to talk about. Is we've also been watching Narcos, or rather I've been watching Narcos. Arla isn't too interested, but it's another show, I suppose, where I've watched it a couple times to the same place and I've never finished it. It's a really good show. I really do enjoy it. But for one reason or another, I get so far into a show and I lose interest or I get distracted by something else. But to tie it back to what you were saying, Orla, when I was in Leaving Cert, so basically the final year in secondary school, or high school, so some people call it, I guess, my Spanish teacher recommended that we watch stuff in Spanish to improve our Spanish overall. Like in particular our listening and our speaking. Here in Ireland you have a written exam, you have a listening exam, and you have an oral exam, so speaking. And one of the shows, believe it or not, that he recommended was Narcos, because it's so naturally done. The Spanish to English in the show is very well done. He was saying you can watch whatever. You could watch, you name it, Orla. You could watch Stranger Things and just set your language to Spanish. Of course you could. But it's not the same as Narcos, because Narcos, you obviously don't need to do that. There's some characters in Narcos that speak fluent South American Spanish. They're in Colombia. And then you also have English characters who speak English, naturally. Oh, I've just missed Robin. I was too busy farting around up at the lake, talking, rather than focusing on the goal, Orla.
I've been
just missed her. Oh, that's so
attacked
annoying.
by Ninya.
Oh, okay.
she's like insisting to sit on me, and so there might be purring coming from like. Oh. I swear it's not me.
That'll add to the overall audio quality.
Oh yeah.
Lovely purring in the background,
She's also blocking my screen.
Astrid is still here beside me, fast asleep. I think she's actually gotten up and turned around. She's facing the other way, but she's sound asleep, Orla. Loving life. But yeah, that's all really I wanted to say, rather than labour on the point. It was interesting that you were talking about that, Orla, where you're kind of, psychotherapy counselor side of your brain was triggered by watching the show.
I wouldn't say that it's educating me.
No, of course not. No, I'm not implying that for a second.
Yeah.
It was just
no.
I thought it was
just
cool.
Just in case people are like, oh yeah, if I want to learn about therapy, I need to watch Sopranos. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Please.
Where did you get your degree? Oh, I got it on Netflix, man. I was watching. No, that's not what I'm saying. It's just my Spanish teacher. I guess what I'm trying to say is there's more than one way to take in something, right? You can, of course, do formal education, which is obviously, for something like psychotherapy, is the only way to do it, right? You can't just bro science your way into a counseling role or a psychotherapy role. You need a qualification.
Well, interestingly enough, very, very wrong, but basically in Ireland at the moment, it's going to be changing in the next year or so. At the moment in Ireland, there's no law stopping somebody from being a therapist without a qualification. So right now, which is why, and it's because Ireland is just so behind on things like mental health and stuff like that, and therapy and stuff. And like there has been cases of even like past pupils from my own college leaving the course early and setting up their own practice, and there's nothing the law can do to stop them. Now, next year or so, that will come to an end where people will actually have to have formal training done to be able to be a therapist. But yeah, just what you're saying there, like formal education, yeah, it should
Absolutely.
be. And if you are going to start going to a therapist, you are well within your rights to ask about their degree. And where they got their qualifications from. Maybe not so much their degree, but where they got their qualifications from and what they specialize in. And if you go to a therapist, they should really be telling you about that in your
Yeah.
I don't want to say your contract, because not everyone gives you a physical contract, but there's an informal contract that is said at the start of your journey with a therapist, and they should be stating what they specialize in, and where they don't have to say where, but like to say that they have a degree and they have formal education in it is very, very important.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's just a wild thing that Ireland have only bringing in much too late. Like I don't even want to think about the repercussions that loophole has had on people with like that have been what's the word, like not sensitive, what's the word I'm looking for?
I'm not sure, love.
I can't think of the name of it, sorry. But basically people who are trusting a therapist to be a good therapist, and it's just extremely immoral. So I don't even want to know what kind of repercussions that has caused for people, but yeah, it is the right thing to do.
That's something I was going to say, and I think you've basically already said it. But you know, Orla and I are pro counseling. You know, we're it's wrong to say pro mental health, right? That's not the way to say it. But Orla and I are very much in favor of talking through your problems and reaching out if you're struggling, if you've poor mental health. You know, reach out to someone who can offer you help and, you know, talk through the issues you're having. Orla and I are very much in favor of that. But there's two levels or two bits that I guess I'm trying to say. Like what you just described there, Orla. If you have poor mental health and you're struggling, you know, doing nothing is arguably bad. You know, if you're suffering and if you're really struggling, just staying silent, in my opinion, will only worsen the situation, or at the very least, right? It will not get better by itself, right? I think that's maybe fair to say. But there's a second layer to that where I think it's more damaging to try and improve your mental health and then get the wrong advice. Like that's to me that's so much more damaging to the person to go to a counselor or to go to someone for advice. You know, it doesn't need to be a counselor, it could be your parents, you know, for example. You confide in someone, you open up, you talk about these things that are affecting you, and that person, whoever they be, counselor, a priest, your parents, your granny, whatever, and they have a negative reaction. I think that's so damaging to or potentially damaging to a person, where, you know, it can change your opinion on counseling. You know, it can take quite a lot of courage to go to that first counseling session. It takes a tremendous amount of courage and effort just to start talking, and it could be as simple as, you know, today I'm feeling sad. We don't need to get into the nitty gritty of why you're feeling sad. Just to go to someone and say, hey, I'm not feeling great. That takes a huge amount of effort, you know? And if you go to the wrong person who doesn't have a qualification, who isn't, you know, equipped to deal with that kind of thing, then it can be so damaging, you know?
Yeah,
so
just to stop you there, James.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Something said there. A therapist isn't there to give you advice. Where it's like we can't advise you on anything. We are there to kind of not necessarily treat you, so we're not a doctor, but we are there to listen to you and to kind of help you facilitate what you need in your journey to make life improvements, basically.
Mhm.
If you're going to a therapist for advice, don't do it. Because if they're giving you advice, first
No,
of
of
all,
course.
that's
Yeah,
something to be
of
worried
course.
about. It's just the word advice. Like, I don't want someone to be listening to this and being like, "Oh, it's a good idea to go to therapy. Maybe I can get some advice on my love
No,
life."
of
That's
course.
not
No,
what
yeah.
they're
That's
gonna do.
no, that's the wrong word, I suppose. I used the wrong word there. But
And
you know,
to be fair, there is not enough in our casual vocabulary to describe what a therapist does. Really, it is like it's one of the first things that we like. One of our first like lessons inside college is kind of like, what does a therapist do? And like everyone says that gives advice or you know all this stuff,
mhm, mhm,
and
mhm,
it's they do it on purpose, but there isn't really a localized term to say what a therapist does.
mhm.
It is hard to put into words what it does, but I just want to say just in case
No,
um
absolutely.
everyone's listening and they're like, oh yeah, that's a great idea.
No, no, absolutely. It's a really good point, and I think you hit on something there where we don't have the we don't have enough kind of terminology or vernacular to talk about this stuff properly. Um, I think that's why there's such a misconception and almost like a little bit of a witch hunt, if you like, surrounding like counseling and psychotherapy, and even just talking about things, like just talking about your feelings, right? Like that's a huge plot point in The Sopranos. Like, how did we start talking about this? We started talking about The Sopranos, right? That's a huge talking point in The Sopranos. Is it is so taboo for Tony to be seeing a therapist, a woman therapist, mind you. That's a huge deal for these guys, of course. You know, these macho men. Um, it's you have to be the ultimate macho man. Like, you can't talk to a woman about your feelings, kind of thing. It's a huge plot point where going to a therapist, like needing therapy, is uh such a scandal. It's like Bridgerton. It's such a scandal. Like the Ton can never find out that Tony Soprano needs therapy. Like basically, like his life is threatened because if someone were to find out, they would try and kill him. Basically, the mafia would, because needing therapy is a sign of weakness to these people. And also the confidentiality side of things. This guy's a mafia boss, so like, is he a rat? Like, is he spilling his guts to his therapist about me, about this person or that person? Like, these people are criminals, and they can be held accountable for their actions if this gets out. So that's a huge talking point in The Sopranos, is the taboo of counseling. And I think what you mentioned, Orla, is hitting on that. Is we don't know how to talk about, never mind talking to each other about our feelings, we don't know how to talk about talking about feelings. Do you know what I mean? There's still a negative connotation surrounding it, if you get what
Well,
I'm
yeah,
saying.
like we deal with that in college a lot, actually. Like, even we started this by talking about like ADHD and like
Yes.
diagnoses that way. We were we did one where we talked about the negative annotations of the word spectrum, because people associated with autism. So people, especially because this is a mature student kind of college or course, obviously a lot of my peers are a good bit older than me, so they grew up in a different generation. So it's really interesting to hear like a 40-year-old react to the word spectrum compared to like me, who is obviously 15 years younger, and what was it saying? 15 years younger, and like I don't really have negative annotations around the word spectrum, because I have family that are on the spectrum, and I respect what like having autism is, and I think actually the word spectrum is a beautiful word. I think it encompasses the meaning of like differentiality. Is it the word differentiality?
Yeah, like
Being different,
celebrating our
essentially.
differences, kind of
Yeah,
things. Yeah.
celebrating our differences.
Sure.
And I think it's actually a really beautiful word, because like if you look at like even physics, what is a spectrum but like almost, what's it called? It's like a prism. kind of that
Yes.
kind of idea.
Yeah,
So
the
that's
spreading the dispersion of light kind of thing. Is that what you mean?
exactly, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I always have great respect for it. So we have negative annotations with the word spectrum, for example. There's negative annotations around so many different words. Emotions, being emotional is another one. So being
Mm,
emotional is always put onto women, and women are emotional.
mhm,
Anger, for some reason, is taken out of being emotional. Men can be angry, but if you call a man emotional for being angry, that's incorrect. That's not incorrect. Anger is an emotion, so somebody who is overusing their emotion or is like feeding too much into emotion is an emotional person. So that saying that no gender is attached to being more emotional or not, it's just what people assume. Women are allowed to be sad, women are allowed to cry, men are allowed to be angry in terms of society and
mhm.
what is for gender norms. So calling a man angry acceptable because a man is allowed to be angry. Calling a man emotional, no, 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 no. Sure, he doesn't cry. Men don't cry.
Mm.
Men can't cry. So negative
But
annotations towards the
it
word
it
emotional and stuff like that.
yeah, it's used as an insult almost. Like
Yeah,
if a man, and like speaking as a man, I don't actually think this way, but having male friends and growing up as a man, like if I was to hear that, or if my mates were to hear that, like, oh, he's an emotional man, like that's almost like, oh, like, oh, so he's a bitch, like you know what I mean? Like I don't think that way, obviously, but that's how people, at least that's how some men see it, is like, it's exactly as you said, Arla. It's completely okay for a man to be angry. If you're on a night out, your mate gets rejected, or someone says something to him, the appropriate reaction, especially when alcohol is involved, the appropriate reaction for some people, I'm not condoning this, is, oh, throw a punch, or punch a wall, or break a glass, or basically crash out, like lose your shit, basically. And like, that's fine, like, well, it's not, obviously, but that's the expected reaction, is, oh, this thing happened to this guy, someone called him a name in the nightclub, and he punched a wall because he was upset.
yeah. It's like boys
Like,
will be boys.
it's unacceptable behavior, but it's expected, right? In the same scenario, someone calls you a name, or you get rejected, whatever, your feelings are hurt, basically. It doesn't matter what the situation is, your feelings are hurt, and you just start crying. Like, in a group of men, you just start crying. Here's another example for you. Sport. Your favorite team loses. I think it's almost commonplace for men to get angry when their team loses the game, you know? Um and I know some people who break their televisions. They fucking, you know, toss the table across the living room. Oh, I can't believe they've lost. I'm so angry. But like, take that same example, that same situation where your team loses 2-0, Manchester United, 2-0. Oh my god, you just start breakdown crying. Just in the middle, like, you're at a you're I'm laughing, I shouldn't be laughing. You're at a party with your bros, a couple of beers, maybe some food on the table. Manchester lose 2-0, and you just break down and cry. Like, you just start crying in front of everyone. Every single man at that table, every single man at that party will be like, man, what's wrong with you? Why are you crying? It's just a game. Like, chill out, bro. There's no need to cry, man. Calm down. But if I punch the wall, you know, like, some lads would be like, oh yeah, I feel the same, man. I'm so annoyed that we lost that game. And I guess I'm kind of talking out of my arse a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Like, that has never actually happened in my life. I do know people, right? I'll caveat that. I do know people who get angry when sporting fixtures don't go their way. Um, my dad has friends who have, had a little bit too much to drink. They've gone to the pub to watch a sporting event, and they've gotten into arguments with people, we'll say, and I'm kind of, I suppose I'm getting off topic from the original point, Orla, but yeah, you're absolutely right. I think it's expected of women to be quote unquote emotional, and it's expected of men to be, angry. There's rarely overlap there, and I do think it's getting better, though, to be fair. I think things have improved. Um, like, our generation, Orla, things have gotten
Yeah,
better. Or they're at least going in the right direction.
yeah. I think it's definitely. it's a lot better. This is something that we were discussing in college actually recently as well, is that violence is actually down. Like the amount of like violent attacks is actually down in percentage wise. It just because we see more of it online because we've access to everything now,
Yeah.
that it makes us feel like there's more going on.
Yep.
So the statistics are there that the amount of like, this is just a violent crime rate per country per year, right? The statistics show that we're actually in a lower rate of crime than we were in, let's say, 10 years ago. But it's just because we have social media now compared to 10 years ago that we
seems
can
more prevalent.
see it way more, right?
Yeah.
And so it can come across sometimes that maybe the world is still not going well. It's still a bit backwards, da-da-da-da. I do think it has improved. Sometimes it feels like it's not. I think as a woman, it's still a really scary world to live in. Like the amount of attacks on women and gender-based violence in the world is horrific, and it shouldn't exist in the first place. But I think it is better. I think these conversations can be had. The fact that I can look online and find conversations about this stuff is really, really good, considering that like 10 years ago, like maybe a bit longer than 10 years ago now, maybe like 12, 13 years ago, like being a feminist was a really, really taboo, bad thing. And like I would put up my hand and say that I was one of those girls that like didn't understand the gravity of what it meant to be a woman and like what happens to women out in the world and the realistic side of it. And I would have been one of those people that like feared being a feminazi and all this. And it was just society's push for me to impress boys, like, and obviously as I came to like love myself more and like understand things more and be more educated on that side of things, I realized that being a feminist is like so important and prevalent, and everyone needs to be a feminist. And it's nothing to do with being a woman, that everyone needs to be a feminist, so that everyone on a gender-based I suppose level can be equals, and that's very, very important. Ireland is very lucky. Like we've just voted in our third female president, and she's a left-wing president, which is absolutely fantastic for us. She won by a landslide as well. She won like double what the opposing candidate was. She was right-wing. 2 women though. Like either way, we were going to have our third female president, which is just amazing. Unfortunately, our government is still right-wing based, so that's fun. But I suppose what I'm trying to say is that what was my point? Sorry. It is important to be feminist. It is great to see that my country is focusing on that a bit more. There's obviously a lot going on in Ireland at the moment where there are a lot of people that are implied that there's problems with different immigrants and stuff like that, and it is really racially charged, and it's really, really heartbreaking to see. James himself is not Irish, he is from Scotland, but because of the colour of his skin, you will never hear a comment be made against James. Obviously he has a bit of an Irish accent as well, and it is just absolutely heartbreaking. I know so many people, and I have obviously my fiance is Scottish, and I know other people and have friends that are not from Ireland, and they are different races and from different countries. And unfortunately at the moment, Ireland's biggest problem is that we have a lot of bigots that are using tragic events of like children and women being attacked and using that as an excuse to be racist. They pinpoint attacks that are done by, let's say, immigrant men, and only focusing on those, when majority of our attacks on gender-based violence in Ireland is from Irish men, white Irish men specifically. And it's very, very disgusting and heartbreaking to see my country act that way, considering there's an Irish person in every country in the world, and Irish descendants in every country in the world, because we are everywhere. And yeah, it's just, we have a win, and it's great to see.
I'm gonna jump in there, just not to interrupt you, but I think there's a quote from James Connolly, and I'll probably get it wrong, but for those of you that aren't Irish, maybe, that are listening, James Connolly is one of our kind of founding fathers, if you like, and he's a quote that it goes along the lines of, you know, let no Irish man cast a stone for fear of hitting his own clansman. Basically, the Irish are, as Orla said, we've exported people. Like, for a long time, Ireland's main export has been humans. And I'm not talking about slavery, right? I'm not. because of the famine, because of other reasons, to do with colonialism, etc., we've had mass immigration basically since, mainly from the 1840s, because that's when the famine was, but before then, right? Irish people have always left Ireland in search of a better life for a lot of our history. And that's where that quote comes from, is, careful what you say about immigrants and foreigners, because you might end up insulting an Irish person. Orla highlighted a very good point there, is that I am not an Irish citizen. I wasn't born here. I myself am an immigrant to this country. I hate these little fly things. Like, I gotta concentrate while I talk to kill these guys. I forget what they're called, but you know the little white flies, Orla? In mines.
Oh yeah.
They're
I never
torture.
entered the mines. You should have said.
Yeah. I want to get the 10 slimes done.
Oh, you do not have it done. Oh, get on my level, bro.
I know, man. I'm sorry. I knew I was gonna lose my talking point by saying that, but
sorry.
Anyway, no, it was me. It was me attacking those bloody flies. That's what I was gonna say. So I am not an Irish citizen. I am a British citizen. I'm from Scotland. I spent, the first few years of my life in Scotland. Then I lived in Tenerife. So again, I was an immigrant to a foreign land that speaks a different language to my own. And then after living in Tenerife, I came back to live in Ireland because my stepdad is Irish, But if you're going to get angry at any immigrant, you should be getting angry at British ones. You should be getting angry at me. Not someone from the Middle East, we'll say, or from Africa, or from South America, or wherever. It doesn't matter where you're from. You should, if you're going to get angry at any immigrant, you should be getting angry at me. Because I have, as in my ancestors, will say, sorry, I keep hitting the wrong button. I can't multitask, folk. I either play the game or I talk. I can't do both.
Man, am I right? So bad at multitasking.
Oh, stuff. Basically what I'm trying to say is, if you're going to get angry at any immigrants, which you shouldn't do, right? If you're going to get angry at any immigrant, you should be getting angry at British ones like myself. Because the British have actually negatively impacted the Isle of Ireland. We, as a group of people, the British, I'm kind of lumping everybody in to one group here, which you also shouldn't do. The British colonized Ireland, and through the penal laws, tried to eradicate Irish culture. The Irish language was forbidden. If you were a Catholic or an Irish speaker, you couldn't go to school. So here in Ireland, we had hedge schools where children had to learn their education in bushes on the side of the road, essentially. That's why they're called hedge schools.
It wasn't just couldn't go to school, you just didn't have any rights. It
That's
was if you're a Catholic, you're not able to do anything for your country other than exist. So be Protestant.
That's the bread and butter of it, So if you're one of these people that get upset by immigration, right, maybe catch yourself on it a little bit. But also, if you're going to be angry at immigrants, have an actual reason to be angry at them. Do you know what I mean? Like, all my friends, basically, now that I'm a grown man, I've lived in Ireland more than most of my life. I consider myself essentially Irish. I'm very proud of my Scottish roots, but I am essentially Irish, right? All my friends, they don't care that I'm British. They often forget. The other night, me and my friends were talking about passports. My passport ended up in the washing machine. And, I'm going to have to get a new passport. So I was like, oh, I'll get an Irish passport rather than a British one. And they're like, what? And I was like, yeah, lads, I don't have an Irish passport. I have a British passport. And they're like, oh, yeah, I forgot that you're from Scotland. That's how ingrained into, like, Irish culture and Irish society I am. I'm essentially Irish. But when these people online are giving out about immigrants and the loss of Irish culture through immigration and all this bollocks, right? You're also pointing your finger at me. But as Orla said, I don't get any negative feedback because of the colour of my skin.
James has never had a racist comment be made to him.
Never.
Like, he's never been told to get out of this country. He's never been told that he's a danger to women and children. He's never been told anything, and it's just because the color of his skin. And if that isn't evidence enough that this is very racially charged anger, and violence towards these people, then I don't know what is. Like, it's just absolutely ridiculous. And may I add, not only is James British, but he is Scottish. And why is that important to bring up? But the Scottish plantation was the most successful plantation of Ireland. That is why Northern Ireland is British occupied still, because the Scottish plantation was so successful, arguably the only successful plantation of the country. And because of that, then the kind of people that were that, let's say, immigrated into Ireland at that time were like successful in like
the Scottish planters
beating out the Irish out of that area, and that is why Northern Ireland is not a part of
the Republic.
Ireland, basically the Republic.
Yeah.
And so everyone forgets that. Everyone's like, oh, the Scottish are so like the Irish. Don't forget. Never forget. And this is why history is so important. And again, just goes to show how racially charged this all is, because Scottish people should be the ones that we are not. I'm not saying we should still be angry with them, because obviously move on and
no,
whatever.
But if you are going to be angry at someone, you know, it should be the Scottish people who, you know, it wasn't necessarily Scottish people, right? The planters were Scottish, so the people that moved into the plantations were poor Scottish farmers and stuff like that. But I know what you're saying. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then the other side of it is as well, like the blanket of the cheek, really, of using the blanket term of protecting women and children is absolutely ridiculous. Because as I said before, most Irish or most gender-based violence in Ireland is caused by white Irish men, and like there's just no talk about that at all. Like Northern Ireland as well has been it's like the most dangerous place for a woman to live in Europe because of the violence that goes on there. And it's not immigrants. It's just not immigrants. And you can look up those statistics, but those people won't look up those statistics. Like the same people who say that they want to protect women and children want Conor McGregor to be president, someone who has been trialed and convicted for raping a woman. So it's just very, very upsetting. And I suppose like we've gotten so off track to where we started this while talking about therapy and like what's going on in Ireland at the moment. But like, it is nice and it's good to see things like that, like Catherine Connolly being voted in, and like our other candidate was another woman, as much as I don't particularly have a nice word to say about Heather Humphreys other than she's a woman. It's just very it's very tough. But to get back to the point we're making is that sometimes the toughness comes from what we're seeing on social media and just being more aware of it. So it might not be as bad as it was 10 years ago, and I don't think it was. Like the stories of like even if you look back to like the 70s and like the kind of things that were going on with like serial killers and stuff like that, obviously it's not as bad now. But yeah, it's just there's like positive and negative to everything, and I do think the conversation around mental health has improved in the last, even from when I'm going to say the last 20 years, from when I was younger to like now. The conversation around that kind of stuff is such greatly improved that it can only go up from here. And the amount of people that I speak to and I tell them that I'm becoming a therapist would have gotten backlash. But if I had done that straight out of college when I turned 18, there definitely would have been backlash. People wouldn't have understood it. Even like I'd say like 10, 15 years ago, my parents would have been like, what? But like my family, different members of my family have gone and done therapy themselves. And I do think it's a changing world and it is improving. And I do think it is a lot better. But yeah, there with sunshine, there's always shadows as well. So there is good and bad to it, but definitely an improvement. And I think it is great. And I'm so glad that I have come from someone who feared being a feminazi to being engaged to the biggest feminist there is. Which James is a great feminist.
I try. That's through a lot of work, by the way.
Yeah,
I know some of my friends listen to these, as in my childhood friends. I've had to do a lot of growing in the last 10 years, and that's not me looking for a pat on the back. James, aren't you great, man? You're so good being a feminist or whatever. When I was a young man, when I was, kind of teenage years, I was arguably the opposite of a feminist. I was very my opinions of everyone, not just women, but my opinions of everyone really were damaging and backwards and skewed. And, you know, through living with Orla, through being Orla's partner, through doing counseling myself, I've had to learn or relearn a lot of those things. Where I'll call it what it is. Like, I grew up a bigot. I essentially was quite bigoted in my ways. I was a very hateful person and very negative person. Where these people that we're kind of condemning, the kind of people that are giving out about immigration and, oh god, you're such a feminazi. Like, I would have used terminology like that growing up, and I've had to unlearn it. So, you know, for Orla to say I'm the biggest feminist in the world, I wasn't always, and I had to do a lot of, it's silly saying the word rehabilitation, right? But I really did, genuinely, I had to unlearn terrible habits and thought patterns that I developed, you know, growing up, I guess, just the way I grew up. So it's nice to hear you say that, Orla.
But like,
but,
even
you know,
even saying that though, James, I was the same. Like, as a girl, I believed that being a feminist was horrendous. Like, that those were just like horribly to say, but like big smelly vegans were feminists. And like, look at me now, I'm a vegetarian, I don't drink dairy, I am a feminist. I also like, yeah, it's just like the negative annotations around the people I would have grown up as well. And that was just what society pushed. So don't feel like you had to learn so much to get to the person you are, because everyone does. I had to as a girl myself, and I've always been very independent, but I still believe those thoughts because of what like people my age were saying about it, you know.
yeah.
And like, kudos to you as well. It's like, you, I think sometimes you give me too much praise. Like, I'm not gonna turn around, like, you obviously have done a lot of growing since meeting me, but you had done a lot of growth beforehand as well. So don't like just put it all on me. Like, you have done a
Yeah.
lot of growth before that. Obviously I wouldn't have just started like going out with a bigot. I'd done my good bit of growth by the time I met you. So
Yeah.
I definitely would not have gone out with you if you were still the way you were when you were younger. So please
Yeah.
don't give me all the credit.
No, not all the credit. I think it's actually tying in really well to the mental health stuff we're talking about here, where like nothing is set in stone. I think Arla and I have both had mental health issues growing up. Um, as in, you know, we felt down, we've struggled basically at different times in our lives, for one reason or another. And during those times, it can feel very hopeless and like, you know, what's it all for? I still have those days, to be quite honest with you. But you can change. Like I think if I was to make up for the way I was, as in I used to be a bigot and quite hateful, if I was to try get some positive karma back, if you like, if I was trying to make up for it in some way, I would use me as an example for people that are struggling, mentally, or, you know, kind of. Oh god, I forgot about these things.
What?
I'm in the trenches here in these mines, Orla.
Will you tell me if I've been
Sorry,
struggling,
I'm
like,
just
because
trying to
we've been
get copper
talking,
for
I've been
us.
struggling to like find things to do. So I'm
Yeah,
bored
yeah.
out of my mind while I've been
Sorry.
talking. Yeah, I'd say.
I suppose what I'm trying to say is, like, if you're in a negative place, I hope you can maybe use me as an example that, you know, there is hope and things can get better.
And I think it's
Go
not
on.
entirely your fault that you've like been sucked into. If you're feeling like, because actually I think I read an article, or else I watched a TikTok, I can't remember which it was, a couple of days ago, of this guy who did an interview basically saying like that he was a red pill. It's a red pill is the negative one, isn't it? He was someone who was a
I
red pill
think so.
person.
I
And
think
he
that's the connotation
basically,
nowadays. If you're red pilled, it's
yeah,
like almost
it's
a joke. I
no,
think.
it's, they actually call themselves the Red Pill
Oh, they
group
call
as well.
themselves it. All right. Okay.
Yeah, so basically he went along. I think he said it started because he was struggling with like getting dates and like seeing
Yeah.
women. So he googled like how to like get a date or how to get a girlfriend or something like that, and it brought him down this pipeline of obviously not very good.
I hate saying that man's
Exactly.
name.
Yeah,
I wish I hadn't. Do you know what? I might even just blurt out that man's name. We don't need to
yeah,
name him Orla, because any platform, any recognition of that man is a wrongdoing. So I'm actually going to
yeah.
cut that name out there. I'm not going to use his name, but you know who I mean when we're, you know,
Put in a really funny name to
was it
replace it.
Mr. Burns in Mr. Burns in The Simpsons? I'm Mr. Snurb or something like that. You know, he just like writes his name backwards. Yeah, but anyway,
So
that dickhead. Yeah, we know who we're talking about.
anyways,
Yeah,
so he went into that pipeline, and obviously it was like very bad. Said that women were below them, and that it presents it at first as like, oh, the world is just confused, and we need to go back to this way, and
yeah,
and it pulls you in, and then all of a sudden you have community, you have people who are like minded, not like minded, maybe like minded is the wrong word, but like similar struggles, you know,
yeah.
and you feel like you have found your people. And then he said it went too far, where it was like hearing the stories that people were saying, and he said it was the comments were getting to him.
Mm,
So he basically decided that he wanted to stop this. He started blocking all that kind of stuff from his feed. He said it was so hard that it took like months for it to get off his feed, even though he
I
would say
bet.
not interested or
Yeah,
block.
I bet.
Like, so he basically came out and did an interview, and basically was like, this is how you get out of it, and this is my story. And he says, like, himself, he's like, I feel very stupid to say that I've done this and I was like trapped into this, and like, oh, da da da. But I just find it very, very interesting. And he like he's coming out and he's like, it is an embarrassing story to tell, but I just want to tell it in case there's anyone that
Mm,
feels ashamed. And I feel like that's kind of what I'm saying. What my point was bringing him up was a lot of people don't move on from things over guilt, and this is something that I
mm,
learned in my own journey. Is even simple things like, oh, I'm trying to get good at going to the gym, but I didn't go today, so I feel super, super guilty. So what would end up happening is I wouldn't go that day either, and it would just be this vicious cycle. So one of the first things that I found beneficial to me in my journey is like learning how to self-forgive and letting go of shame. So instead of being like, oh, I'm such a lazy bitch, I should have gone to the gym today, and then that cycles into not going the next day because I feel so
mm,
crap about it, I go, okay, I didn't go today, and for whatever reason, whether I was feeling anxious or I was tired or I was grumpy or something came up and it didn't suit my timeline, I didn't go today, but that's okay because it's just life and I have another day. And then I'll feel more motivated to go the next day. And that's helped me with so many things, not just the gym, but
mm.
just a good example. And I think it's really, really good to know that if you had bad opinions on mental health, on women, on immigrants, and you have recently been educated on it and have now have a different thought process towards it, maybe don't want to talk about it, or you still hold a lot of shame, you won't really move on from it until you forgive yourself. And it is really
Mhm.
okay to forgive yourself. It is a skill that takes a long time to learn.
It's
Because you feel
very difficult.
it is very difficult. I don't want to imply that it's not. It was more, again, like a eureka moment for me, that once I realized that I could just forgive myself, it became a lot easier for me. But a lot of people don't. Oh, I'm level 3, so I got crab pot and dish of the sea as well.
Nice.
Sorry. A lot of people don't do it and they don't practice it, and it becomes this big, huge task,
Mm.
and that's okay. Um, it's not something to be beating yourself over, and it comes as a small wave at the start, but then it
Continue
builds
there.
up to be able to do it easily, and to do it for small things and to do it for big things. And I think people shouldn't hold shame for maybe thinking differently before and then learning differently
Yeah.
now. And that's one thing I find I kind of struggle with cancel culture, is that people will have moved on from who they were before, and people have made mistakes before, and then if things are brought up from like something they said 10 years ago, and they have evidently proved that they are a changed person, have different opinions, and come out and apologized, they should be they should be taken as face value of forgiveness 10 years later as they were 10 years before.
Mm.
Obviously there are some things that go a bit too far, and
Of
cancel
course.
culture is appropriate for people that like have been caught out continuously doing bad things over, let's say, the
Yeah.
10-year period.
Or things that are objectively bad, you know.
Yeah.
Like
And
there's certain
sometimes,
things that are unacceptable, you know.
yeah, and sometimes if before being caught out, if a person comes out and says this happened and I apologize for it, that can obviously help with this like cancel culture in that sense. But yeah, it's one thing that's kind of crap about cancel culture is
permanency of it.
Not just that. I just think it cycles this feeling of shame again, and it doesn't allow forgiveness or self-forgiveness, where people will take what someone did 10 years ago and a bad thing and hold it against them forever, instead of going, hey, actually they did this bad thing when they were like 15, and as they're 25 now, they have proven that they don't have those horrible opinions and have actually come out and apologized for it. And those people shouldn't be on the receiving end of cancel culture. There are some people, though, on the other side of it that wholly 100 deserve cancellation. And people like the name that we bleeped out earlier, or I mentioned Conor McGregor as well, 100% should not be mentioned in high regard at all, because they have done and been convicted of horrible, horrible crimes.
It's
but
it's the influence. It's the influence as well that these people have. Like the positives and negatives of cancel culture. You know, if someone like the mentioned people there, the two lads, it's not just about you've done something wrong and you should be punished. It's the damage that they can continue to do because they have a voice. So like, you know, there's a lot of lads. I myself used to follow him before, critically, right before he went off the rails. You know, my turning point with, actually, do you know what, Arla? We're gonna pause this here. I think this is a really good conversation. But we're running out of time in terms of an episode. So we're just gonna take a quick pause here, folks. If you're enjoying the conversation, please, you know, tune in to the next episode. If we're boring you to death, you know, skip to the next one. If you disagree with what we're saying, yeah, sure, you're absolutely free to do so. You know, that's...
But you're wrong.
No, Orla, Jesus Christ. No, you're not. No, you're... On some levels, it's an impasse. You know, like, I disagree with harming children. If you agree with harming children, then, mate, you know, get fucked. Get off my channel. But, you know, let's... You know, everyone can have opinions on different things within reason. So look, we'll leave it here for now. If you're enjoying this kind of thing, let us know in the comments. If you're not, again, let us know in the comments. We'll change it up. Maybe we'll talk about something else like sushi or pizza, you know, something more lighthearted. But either way, thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.